I like to use sports references, and so I feel like it is like a halftime check-in and kind of make adjustments from there and see how they work out.
Hello, and welcome to the Heartfelt Clubhouse. I am your host, the BC, and as always, I am joined here with our August man of the month, Grant. How are you doing today, Grant?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me back. Week 3, we're surviving and thriving. So it's good to be back. I feel like I'm getting the routine down of this whole podcast thing. So I feel like I'm a seasoned veteran now. We're in week 3, and so no, I'm doing well. It is Monday. We're recording on a Monday, so Mondays bring its own challenges and trying to get started back in the week and get adjusted. I feel like it's always a slap in the face to go from Sunday to Monday and try to get back into the swing of things. But as far as Mondays go, it's a good Monday, and I'm doing well. So spirits are high. Spirits are high. How are you doing?
You know what? I'm so good. I'm really, really happy to be hopping back on here with you. I agree. Like Mondays, dear Lord, man. Mondays are their own thing. But no, I'm really happy that we could get on here and, just go over the highs and lows of last week. What were your highs and lows?
Oh boy, last week was as far as work goes. I'll do like a work segment and then just like a life segment because I feel like that's honestly how I've been operating these days. Is I have my job and my work that brings its own stress and positives and negatives, and then I've got my own life on the side which brings positives and negatives. But I think that's kind of how a lot of people operate. Is there's obviously some crossover, but they're two separate worlds. But last week was, as far as work goes, was very slow, and so it was good to kind of catch my breath, catch up on sleep, and take care of the things that I haven't been able to take care of, including myself. Getting groceries, things that were neglected, I can kind of finally catch up on, and so that was a definite positive. I think this week's going to pick up a bit, but it was nice to relax. And then as far as life goes, my girlfriend was in the weekend before. She lives in Philly. And so that was nice, and always good to catch up and spend some quality time. And then, yeah, it was, like I said, just more of a catch up week for me. And I'm just working on myself and, my mental health, and trying to improve and work on the things that Matt had given me, and kind of put them into practice when you're not so bogged down with other things. It's tough because it is work to do these things. You get tasks, and you have, it's almost like homework. You go to class, and then you get given tasks and assignments. So I was doing a lot of, reflecting, journaling, things like that, of taking kind of a snapshot of where I was and kind of how I'm doing, week 2 weeks in. So that was good as well, of monitoring my progress and kind of taking a step back and like, okay, two sessions in, how is Grant doing? How do I feel about all of this? And so it was good to have that time to be able to do that. So it was a overall really good week. So
Yay! Yeah, that's so exciting. I'm really happy you got to see your girlfriend, and she sounds like a really good support system. Sounds like you have some good
absolutely.
support systems in your life.
Yep.
So you said you've been journaling, and
I
this is
have.
new
I
to
have.
you, right? This is new.
It is very, very new to me. I've never kept a journal in my life. Maybe like in elementary school, I might have written down some thoughts, but no, nothing like this. So now, yeah, it's my first experience journaling, and it's not so much of day to day, what I did as a traditional journal. It's more of my thoughts, my feelings, and how the day to day interactions affected me. And so then we can kind of look at, okay, in this situation, I had these thoughts, these feelings, it affected me this way. And then I can kind of go off of that, talk through it with my counselor, and then be able to make adjustments kind of on the fly. So I don't like to use, I like to use sports references. And so I feel like it is like a halftime check-in and kind of make adjustments from there and see how they work out in real life. And then, it's kind of a constant tweaking. And it's work. It's not easy. I think I've been surprised, one, with, the progress. I'm shocked just in 2 weeks how much progress I've seen, but also, it is effort, and it's not just like I thought you'd go and be like, yeah, you just talk through these things and then boom, I'm fixed. And that's definitely not the case. There is work that needs to be done, and it is, a learning process, which has been fun in itself, of kind of going through the steps and seeing the progress and, seeing the fruits of your labor. As you put in this work, you can kind of reap the benefits. And, I've already seen huge gains in 2 weeks of just kind of my viewpoint on things and, my confidence, so many things that, I was working towards. I've already seen huge gains, and it's been cool to see, looking back of situations or like things that would get me down before, or that I'd be, fearful of or nervous. Those feelings aren't as strong. I wouldn't say, I'm instantly fixed, but I can tell there's been improvements, which is very exciting to see, because, when you put in this work, you want to see something. And it's been exciting to kind of look back and like, okay, something that in July would have really freaked me out or really would have gotten to me, or I would have never stood up and said something, or would have been comfortable in that situation. Those situations, I now feel like I have almost a toolbox to address them and kind of go into those situations feeling more prepared, and that gives you a certain amount of comfort and confidence that I didn't have before. And it takes someone kind of walking you through that, and someone who's a professional that can kind of say, hey, what you're going through is very normal, and here's a good way to try and address that. Try it out, see how it works for you. And so it kind of goes to that tweaking of, you get these different tools that you can try in different situations, and then see how they work, how they work for you, and then and go from there. So
I love that, a toolbox. That's a great way to put it. Okay, so how many journal entries do you think you've done at this point?
I do. So I just kind of keep a live track of, my thoughts. If I have negative thoughts, positive thoughts. So I've been doing it since my first session. So I probably have 12 entries or so. I try to do one each day. And as Matt mentioned it, my counselor Matt mentioned it, it's just kind of, when you get the opportunity, pop into the bathroom real quick and just like jot. I have it on my phone. And so it's very easy. I can just quickly, it's nothing long, just a quick jot of my feelings. And I like doing it because I can, I'm not sure about something. I can jot down my thoughts beforehand of how I'm feeling in that moment, jot how it went or how I'm feeling afterwards, and whether those feelings were valid, or I was just operating from a negative and kind of fearful space, and none of it was justified. And that's a good way too of showing myself that these things I'm fearful for, nervous for, are all in my head, and it's almost anticipation of things is what can really bog you down. And then once you actually have that, you realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be nervous about. And those things, you start to keep track of them. And I think journaling is so important because you can kind of look back on it, and it almost it solidifies it when you write it down. There's something to it of not just, okay, yeah, thinking it, but also writing it down and then having a log of all these situations of, wow, 3 times in the past week, I had these same situations, and each time I was nervous, afraid, what have you, before and then afterwards. I realized that there was, it went great, or there's nothing to be afraid of, and then you can kind of it takes that fear out of those situations because you realize that what you once were afraid of doesn't really have that same power over you. So it's good to have that, and then also when you're feeling those negative feelings and those thoughts, then you can kind of reference back and be like, okay, these are the times that I had these similar thoughts, and this was the outcome. And sure enough, I came out just fine, and if not stronger on the other side. And it kind of gives you more confidence and comfort going into that, and kind of alleviates that stress. So, highly recommend the journaling, even if you're not doing counseling or talking with someone. Just a mental log of where you're at, and kind of what's going on in your head is, I think, important. And I did not realize that beforehand. And it's a very simple step that people can take that will help in many ways. So, yeah, it's been highly recommend.
You touched on a really good point of, you being able to label those emotions and, over time eventually seeing patterns and things like that. It also does kind of take away the sting of everything, the potency of that emotion, right? Because once it's labeled, it's kind of loses its power. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, is this your first time really sitting and labeling emotions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had times, where I've sat down and I've tried to figure out what I felt. And it was, I could identify very general, fear, stress, nervousness, but it wasn't, what about that situation made me nervous, made me fearful. And it's hard to kind of pinpoint that. And it's sometimes not fun to do, because it reveals things about you that you don't want to think about or want to dwell on for too long. But and like you were saying, once you identify them, it makes it so much easier to then address it, because you can then pinpoint and kind of narrow in on what you are afraid of. And it goes back to the first question that Matt asked me is, what is your biggest fear? And once you can identify those and address them, it makes it much easier to kind of develop an approach to dealing with that. And I think that's where, therapy and counseling helps, is developing that approach. But really only, your counselor can talk you through and try to help you to identify those things, but it does require, a certain amount of time of sitting down and reflecting on your feelings and emotions. And one of my notes in my journal, it's funny you mentioned it, was, if you can name something, it becomes more familiar, and it becomes we're less afraid of things that we're familiar with. And so if you can put a name to something, then it does take that fear out of it and that power out of it, because it's something that's familiar, and then it's less of this, this stranger danger, and it's more of, someone that and that once you know it, you can kind of, take it head on. So it's funny you mentioned that, because that was one entry in my journal of naming your fears and, taking the sting out of them.
Yeah. So obviously feel free to say no, but if you're comfortable, is there like a snippet of a journal entry you'd be, comfortable sharing? There's really no pressure. No pressure at all.
Let me see if I can pull one up. I've got one right here. This was one of the days where I really sat down. It was the same day that I had mentioned. My note that I just referenced was, it's more prophetic than what I previously said it as. But I wrote, everyone has demons. You just need to name them. Anything with a name is less scary and more familiar. And I think that's kind of how I was feeling at that time, and it goes back to what we were talking about. Another one is, I have too many thoughts that are confidence detractors and not enough confidence boosters. And I think a lot of people, it's tough And I don't know what, I couldn't tell you what situation brought that up. I honestly think I was laying in bed, just kind of like thinking about things. And that's when my best thoughts come, is just kind of when it's quiet. And I think that's why I don't meditate myself, but I understand now why it's so powerful and people rely on it so much and advocate for it, is because having that quiet time to think is very important without distractions. But yeah, that idea of too many, it's that pervasive thought in your head of, that little head, voice, trying to knock you down. And I think it's important to recognize that that's simply what it is just a voice. And once you take the power out of it, you can start to get control and see some real benefits and gains. And so I've been really focusing on having more confidence boosting thoughts than confidence detracting. I'm definitely a perfectionist, and so I expect every single thing that I do, I want to be great, and that's it's not healthy, and it's no way to go about your life, because we are humans, we are not perfect, and you will never be satisfied with anything you do if you're constantly expecting it to be perfect. And so I think I've carried that. It carries over into many parts of my life. Work, social, family, everything. I want to be great at all of those, and you just can't be great in every single situation. Doesn't mean that you can't be great, but you can't expect greatness every single time. And I think that's been a big step for me, is recognizing that it's okay to be average sometimes. Like, there's nothing wrong with being average, and quite frankly, people aren't going to judge you or think less of you. In fact, they probably think that you're doing great, but you just are rating yourself as average. And so that's been a big step for me, is recognizing that, one, just stop being so hard on yourself, because life is hard. It's all at a time we can really do. So one, stop being so hard on myself, and two, I would do. It goes in hand with one of these, like, every interaction, everything I did, like, I do these, like, post game press conference with myself of, like, all right, like, what did I do right, what did I do wrong, and it was very much less what I do right and focused on what I did wrong. And those are those confidence detractors that I'm talking about, that you might have done just fine in whatever situation that you're dealing with, but that voice saying that you didn't will, it'll eat you alive, and it will take you to a place that you don't want to be. And you have to recognize it. And this is that naming that demon, that it is just simply a voice that is there, that is controllable. And so that's been a big step, and kind of a big realization that I had last week.
That sounds huge. I mean, that really does sound like a breakthrough, because in our society, everything is so focused on success and overworking ourselves. How efficient can you be? And I feel like a lot of that burden also does fall, I feel like men take it really on their shoulders of, okay, my worth comes from my success. And the reality is, like, even imperfect action is still action, And you are worthy just because you exist. Like, you could lay on the ground and eat grapes all day, and you're still fucking worthy. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's huge. When you do get these thoughts and you're kind of attacking, yourself, your little mind voice is going crazy, how are you countering it?
I think, as we discussed before, it's a good question, because it's not easy. And I think everybody recognizes it, that it's not easy. It's so much easier to be hard on yourself than it is to be positive. And so one is just recognizing it for what it is. Start to work on realizing that it's simply just, it is a part of you. Nobody is saying these things. It's simply you saying these things, and therefore you have full control over it. At times it might not seem like you have control over it, because it's so ingrained, and it's it has so much power. And so it's just slowly chipping away at the power that it has over you, I think, is kind of how I view it as. And that's where the work comes in. Is it's not an instant thing. Okay, this, I'm never going to listen to that voice again. And it does have some value of improving and whatnot, but when it gets to the point where it's taking you down with it, and you are, it's robbing you of happiness, it's robbing you of joy and confidence, then it becomes an issue. And so I think it definitely has a value to it, in that you can work and improve, but once it starts making you less of who you are, and you start acting out of fear as opposed to confidence, then try to realize that it is under your control. And then the third is then start, whenever you have those negative thoughts, counteracting them with positive thoughts, which again is not, it sounds easy, but is what really comes down to is every time you face those thoughts, you have to notice them and then make an active effort to counteract them with the positive thoughts, and start thinking about, okay, like, what did I do well? And sure, I could do some things better, but nobody got hurt, and either the job got done, or everybody left happy. Whatever it is, whatever situation, you have to also realize that if nobody's dying, these things that you put so much pressure on yourself for, and you stress yourself out over, in the grand scheme of things, aren't gonna make or break, and the consequences really aren't that drastic. At least in what I've been dealing in recently, these are the negative thoughts I'm having are very day to day things that I will continue to deal with on a daily basis. And I think that's kind of one reason I wanted to go to therapy. Was like, these things aren't going away. They are always going to be there. And so therefore I need to figure out a way to deal with them, because if not, then it's going to be a long, long road. And I think that's a hard point to get to, is accepting that these stressors, these things in your life aren't going away. It's a matter of learning how to deal with them. And that's kind of been the journey I've been on these past 3 weeks, is kind of learning to deal with these different stressors in my life and different situations that come up, and not letting them have control over me, as opposed to me having control over the situation and the stressors or whatever is happening that day, that week, and really taking that power out of those things that are in your life. So I know that was a long-winded answer to your question, but it's kind of been the thought process I've been going through.
Yes. No, that's huge. And, I think I'm going to do a little shout out to my friend Michaela. I was just on her podcast a few weeks ago, and she touched on this as well. And she said, she had a lot of self-doubt. She had a lot of insecurities that she was working through. And her step, the way it looked for her to work through it, was she turned those insecurities into her affirmations. So her example was, she's a really tall girl. So she, instead of being like, oh, I'm so tall, blah, 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 she would say the affirmation of, I'm tall and I'm sexy, or whatever it was, just to build that confidence. So I think you're definitely on the right path, and you're doing work that is so hard, but is also so needed. Like, everyone under the sun needs to, combat that little angry voice in our heads that sometimes runs crazy.
I love that. I think that's great. Of taking, I love that idea of taking your insecurities and kind of, owning them, and not viewing them as insecurities, and not, whether it's society telling you they're insecurities, or you telling yourself that they're insecurities, you taking that, and, it's again, that common theme of taking the power out of it, and you having control over it. And you say, no, this is who I am. I'm proud to be tall, and, whatever it is, for me, I'm slightly soft spoken. And so it's like, no, like, I'm a good listener and I provide value, and that is a very valuable thing, that in a trait that not a lot of people have. And so like you have to flip those around, and like your friend was saying, I think that's great. I love that.
Oh my God, snaps for Grant. Yes, you are soft spoken, and that is your power for sure. I love that about you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yes, I cannot wait to hear. I'm going to put you on the spot all the time now and just be like, hey, text me your affirmations right now.
Hey, hit me. I'm not hiding away. I'm not shying. So whenever you, I'm here for it. So no, absolutely. And I'll do the same for you. We'll get some affirmations going.
Yes, accountability. I love it.
Yep.
Awesome. So have you, reached out to anyone? Has anyone reached out to you recently to check how you're doing?
It's the same parties again. I feel like I'm a broken record now.
Shout out to mom. Shout out to my girlfriend.
Shouts out to my leading women in my life. They're strong and supportive and fantastic. So shouts out to them always and forever. Other than that, my dad, I will say, my dad has been also, he's done a lot better too, as I've gotten older. And I think, obviously as I move away, and start a job, it's hard to keep in touch with your family and whatnot and keep that close relationship. And, my family is a very tight, and we like to maintain that. And my dad has done a really great job of, he texts me every other day almost, asking how I'm doing. And so I know in episode 1, I was really ragging on my dad, but he truly has been one of my biggest cheerleaders, and always talks about, just last night he was texting me saying, I love bragging on you, so proud. And like it's things like that it warms your heart. It really does, and it makes a big difference to have people in your corner, and checking on you. And so and I know that's a luxury to have. Not everybody has that. And so I'm very blessed in that regard to have, a supportive family, and support system around me. And as far as I feel like this question's coming, have I told more people? I've like ran into situations. It's still, I don't know what I feel like there's just this hump that I need to get over. And I still, full honesty, full disclosure, it's still tough for me. With coworkers, we'll be talking about, just like the stresses of life and whatnot, and I'll like have this moment where I'm like, this would be the time that like, I could talk about this, and I still, for some reason, like there's something holding me back, and I know, again, I said last week, it's something I'm still working on, and I'm hoping.
You know what? Honestly, it's your journey. Like, there's really no obligation for you to ever share this, I mean, it's amazing that you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and hop into therapy. And obviously normalizing discussions about therapy can be as simple as allowing someone else to be like, hey, I'm thinking about getting therapy, and you being like, that's awesome, good for you. You don't even have to, share the experience if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. And I think it's offering yourself that grace of, I mean, same with your dad. Like, you guys are human. So I know you said in the first episode, you feel like you ragged on him. But the reality is he is checking on you in those really genuine ways, even if maybe he hasn't always allotted space for emotions. And I think that's what we are. Humans are all just contradictions of, oh yeah, I'm really proud to be in therapy. Oh, but maybe I'm not going to tell people,
Yep.
And that's okay.
Exactly.
That's totally not a problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is definitely part of the journey. And these are good ways of monitoring progress. I think it's hard when you're dealing with mental health. It's not a tangible thing that you can, when you're in a sport again, you can look to stats, percentages, things that will reflect your progress, and it's hard in mental health. And so things like that are true benchmarks are good ways, and it's kind of how I'm measuring myself, one of many, and also just kind of the general vibes, feeling, but it's obviously very hard to measure. But there's definitely a noticeable, especially after the second week. I think I was doing a lot of thinking about this last week too, of like what is it about it that has been so helpful. And that's it's hard to put your finger on, because when I'm talking with Matt, it's conversation, and it's we sit down and we just start talking, and then 45 minutes later it's like, okay, like this was great, go try these things. And so I tried to like think, okay, what about that has been has given me the most success. And I really do think it is just having a space to air out these concerns, stresses, feelings that I didn't have before, in a very, as safe as possible environment, with someone that doesn't know me, doesn't know my history, my past, and is strictly just there to do exactly that, which is talk through things and help me out. Um, and so I think that has been the biggest thing, is I just haven't had someone that is strictly just there, doesn't have any other interest other than improving my mental health, and we can focus and work on the things that I want to. And I think that has been great, of just almost a sounding board of bouncing things off. And then obviously he has his own expertise that he can then provide his thoughts, his views on things, and kind of give me some things to work on that I wouldn't necessarily have if it was just me talking with a close friend. Yeah, it'd be, it's nice to have that, it's important to have that, but I think it's also important to have a close friend that doesn't really know you. It's kind of weird to say, but like a close friend that doesn't really know you and is strictly just there to help you improve your mental health. And I think that's been the biggest thing for me, is kind of just running things by him, and just like talking out loud these thoughts that I've had for so long, and kind of again taking that power out of it, because once I say it out loud, it's not as scary, and you recognize that these things aren't things that should have control and power over you. And once you say it out loud, it's like, okay, it's out here, let's deal with it now, as opposed to when they're internal, bottled up, it's again you just trying to deal with them. And sometimes when you've been dealing with them for so long, they're your roommates, they've been living with you for so long that you can't just kick them out. You got to have someone else come and help kick them out for you.
That's a great way to look at it. All right, so before we fully wrap up, what are 3 emotions you're feeling right now?
3 emotions feeling right now. I'm feeling energized, to be here talking
That
with you.
was mine. That was actually mine. Oh, okay. Energized. Go for it.
Energized. I always feel energized after these, and kind of a new willingness and readiness to take on the week. It's been a good check-in of discussing where we're at, not just me, where we're at, and how things are going. So energized. I'm hopeful. I've got my 3rd session this week, and so I've seen how much progress has come through the first 2 weeks, and so I'm hopeful and excited. I guess those go hand in hand. Hopefully excited to see what the 3rd week brings. I'd say these are all in the same theme, but prepared. Kind of, I again, with the toolbox, I feel like I'm so much more equipped to handle what life brings this week. It's going to be a busy week, and so I usually would be super stressed out about that, and scared, fearful of what's to come, and just kind of, again, the anticipation of what is to come is usually worse than what actually comes. And so having those tools, those, that armor, those weapons that you have that you can take it on, it makes you feel much more comfortable and prepared to handle those things. So
yeah, so mine are, since you stole energized, which is fine, I guess. I'm super proud. Like, I'm very proud of you. I already see, like, even through the Zoom, I'm feeling the energized.
Yeah. Good.
Big energy shift. I'm really motivated. Like, after you and I do these calls, it reminds me why I started the Heartfelt Club, and I'm really happy that we're on this journey together, and hopefully more people, will randomly hear this and will get to thinking about their own mental health. And I am...
It's tough. It is tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's not.
No, so I'm motivated. I'm very proud, and I'm really content. Like, I'm just happy with where I'm at in life. Like, very at peace, which makes me happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is the goal.
Yes.
That is, that is great to hear.
Yes. Okay, so even though you have so much homework, I'm giving you more, and I'm giving all of our listeners a little bit of homework. Reach out to someone and ask how they are. Maybe someone you haven't talked to in a while. Because, like you said, you have a lot of people who check on you, and maybe some people aren't as lucky in that regard. So let's shoot out a mass text to all our people and just be like, hey, how are you? I have a few minutes. Let's catch up. See where that takes you. And aside from that, Grant, do you have any calls to action for the people listening?
I'm going to echo that one. And I saw your posts of, helpful, places to start on checking in on people. I think they're fantastic, and they're kind of easy ways to start the conversation. And so I love that. I love the call to action. And I think everybody, can do with a check-in and can do the checking in. It goes both ways. And so, I encourage everybody to, I think I said this last week, just take that time to reflect and try to label those emotions, because it's not easy, but it goes a long way. And so thanks to everybody out there that does listen.
Yes. Well, I'm so happy for you. You have another session coming up. I hope it goes so well. Cannot wait to touch base again and hear more. Thank you guys all for joining us in the clubhouse. We will meet again same time next week. And don't forget to go out there and be more heartfelt. Woo!
Woo!